Bessette Kennedy has long been a fascination among a certain group of women, of which I am one. She became very famous in the early 90s when she started dating and then married JFK Jr. before they both died tragically alongside her sister in a plane crash. He was piloting a plane. They were on their way to Martha's Vineyard in 1999. And ever since then, she has remained this icon of minimalist style that's really emblematic of the 90s. Hol, do you remember much of her from that time?
I remember that wedding photo. There's only one photo from their wedding, or there's a very iconic one, where they're coming out of what looks like the most humble little weatherboard white chapel ever, and she's wearing just this very simple bias cut dress. And the thing is at the time, certainly in the late 80s, style was more. Like celebrity wedding dresses were bigger than a house, and everything was more, and like Trump was big, right? So gold toilets and all that stuff. And she was the antithesis. She was very simple, very beautiful. I was thinking it was a bit depressing in a way how elevated she is as an icon, because she is like skinny, blonde, waspy lady. But then I remembered my obsession with Gwyneth and I told myself to sit down because she's very Gwyneth, right?
Yeah.
Like she was very Gwyneth style before Gwyneth.
Can I ask why we are hearing so much about her at the moment? She feels very in the zeitgeist. There was that book that's recently come out about her. You and Amelia were talking about her recently.
So look, there have been Instagram accounts, because her story is actually completely tragic, because if you think about Princess Diana and Meghan Markle, but without early Diana, without any of the confidence, Meghan Markle's not quite right in terms of she was very confident and she was a famous actress and she's been very comfortable with public attention, obviously not the trolling. But Carolyn Bessette Kennedy never wanted to be famous. No. She worked for Calvin Klein behind the scenes. She never did an interview, I don't think. And she was absolutely stalked and harassed by paparazzi. So they lived in New York and she was on the street everywhere. So there's a very limited number of photos of her. And every outfit that she wore back in the 90s, you could look at it now and it was very much, it would look current now. And it's weirdly always looked current ever since the early 90s.
So why am I seeing stuff about like a movie coming out and people are mad about the movie?
Exactly. So what's happened is that Ryan Murphy, who is the producer of all kinds of huge, big Hollywood things, he's got a series deal with Netflix. He's making a show called American Love Story, which is either a series or a film, I'm not sure, for streaming, about JFK Jr. and Carolyn Bessette Kennedy. Because it was hugely part in that same way when Diana died, all of the world and the UK went into shock and grief. The Kennedys are like American royalty. Yeah. And when he died tragically and suddenly, all these things about the Kennedy curse and the women who encounter the Kennedys and what happens to them. So there's been absolute public fascination. It was super smart of him to decide to make this show about them. However, on the weekend, last weekend, he released a series of photos of the actor and actress who've been cast to play. A newcomer called Paul Kelly's playing JFK Jr. and an actress I'm not familiar with called Sarah Pidgeon is playing Carolyn Bessette Kennedy. Now, he says they were just camera tests. Everyone went nuts.
They
the
really
colour
did.
of the hair was wrong. The Birkin bag that she was carrying was wrong. The clothes she was wearing. And since then, they've started filming on the streets of New York, and people have just ripped into the actress for not looking right. Carolyn Bessette Kennedy's original hairstylist, a guy called Brad Johns, who's retired now, he came out and said the hair's completely wrong. Like, this is a woman who is there's a cult around her, and I would say I'm part of that cult.
I know, but the cult is only about what she looks like. Nobody hardly ever talks about what she was like. You know, there's a little bit out there about, she was maybe a bit neurotic. Maybe there was some, like people have speculated and said lots of uncharitable things. But it's what she looks like that everybody's particularly obsessed with. So if the hair colour, and it's a very particular rich girl blonde, right, of the time, is half a shade wrong, it's a big deal.
People feel insulted. People are like, you have all this reference material. you're right, Hol. So much of what we know about her is coded from photos.
And as you said, they're all paparazzi photos.
Yeah, and some of those outfits still exist, and they've, various people own them. Some of them have been auctioned. So Ryan Murphy had to address the backlash because it was really full on. Like a lot of my group chats with people who are also obsessed with her have lit up. I'm in a subreddit called John and Carolyn who has absolutely gone off. I was in it beforehand. Anyway, I follow quite a few Instagram accounts. He came out and said he was clearly quite shocked about all of this, Ryan Murphy. And he said, Carolyn Bessette is clearly a religious figure and it's a religion of her own. We're narrating the story of an unknown individual who falls in love with the most famous man in the world, and suddenly she can't leave her house. She was constantly photographed being insulted by the paparazzi. They're doing to our Caroline what they did to the real life Caroline. It is unjust.
Cool. That's so true.
Isn't this casting thing, though, exactly what happened with The Crown? Remember they cast Diana?
Elizabeth Debicki.
Yeah, and they got really mad because they went, no,
Elizabeth
she's
Debicki
not right.
would have been good for this.
She would have a little bit too old, though, Elizabeth Debicki, but you're right. I mean, there are a number of actresses, which of course everyone's always been talking, who would you cast if you were going to cast. The actor that they've chosen, I'm not familiar with her. I don't know her work. Obviously, Ryan Murphy's pretty good at what he does. I don't think he would have cast a bad actress, but you're right, Hol. It's so coded in how she looks and people are upset that she doesn't quite look right. And then the outfits that she was perhaps wearing on the street while they were filming, people are saying it's like Temu, Carolyn Bessette Kennedy, that she's wearing like a Zara cheap satin skirt and Converse. The thing most people are insulted by is that they showed her with like a pleather blazer, a black top,
Look at Mia's face.
a chocolate brown, nasty, cheap kind of bias cut skirt in satin and a high top black Converse. And like I could honestly recite to you every outfit she's ever worn. I could identify them. I could and it's like, how can they have got this so wrong?
Isn't this probably the difference between, and maybe what we've seen now, the test stuff, as you say, a very good costume department and a not so good costume department? Because the thing is you can wear someone else's clothes. Like I could dress as Mia today, right? But if I don't have a deep understanding, and Mia obviously has a very specific style of what that Mia has about her style, I'm going to get it wrong. I'm going to get the shirt's not going to be quite the right kind of oversize. You know what I mean? There's very specific details. And surely the really good costumers of the world understand that deeply, right?
He says there's a 10-person wardrobe committee, including people who have these Instagram accounts that have been going for 20 years. I think because there's a finite number of photos with her because she tragically died so young, everybody is so ingrained with these images and anything that doesn't fit exactly, people feel really insulted by. But it's interesting because it raises these issues of accuracy and taste, but also of ethics, because Jack Schlossberg, who is JFK Jr.'s nephew, the son of his sister, has come out and said, this is grotesque what Ryan Murphy's doing. The family of JFK Jr. wasn't consulted. Presumably Carolyn Bessette's family weren't consulted either. We hope you're going to donate some money to the JFK Jr. Memorial Fund or whatever it is. And Ryan Murphy came out and said, yes, we did do that. And he's not trying to upset anyone, but like it is all a bit icky. And I say this as someone who has pored over photos of her for all these years, and I've been thinking so much about her poor mother who lost 2 daughters in that crash, and one of them was a twin, and her twin sister is still alive, Lisa Bessette. And yeah, I just think about them, like we've fetishized the image of this dead woman, and she was a person, as you say, Holly. Anyway, it's coming out on Netflix, presumably in 2026.